The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in this show and do not necessarily represent the views of DerryCam, the town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates.
Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ass. We are on episode 13. It is a hot summer day for me because I was outside a lot today. And yeah, we're in the studio. I'm happy to be here. So anyway, today we have our special guest, Representative Fred Doucette of Salem. So take a minute to introduce yourself.
I'm happy to be here on lucky episode 13, Anthony, too. Yeah. I'm Representative Fred Doucette. I'm serving my fifth term in the New Hampshire House. I serve as Deputy Majority Leader. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic from Salem. I retired probably 10 years ago, and I've taken on politics as my second career. And at present, I chair the state of New Hampshire, and I'm also a senior strategist for Vivek Ramaswamy for president. Just dialing back a little bit, as Anthony's well aware, I also served as President Trump's chairman here in 2016 and in 2020. We have a real interesting dynamic in presidential politics right now, and I look forward to our discussion.
Happy you're here. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
So, speaking of Trump, the big topic of the day, Trump has gotten his third indictment. Lucky number 3. So, I wrote down what he's being accused of this time. Conspiring to overturn an election, interrupting Congress, that's a weird one, and taking away voting rights. And Trump called it a quote-unquote pile-on to what he already has. And coinciding with that, Devon Archer, who is a known associate of the Biden family, particularly Hunter Biden, he claims that there is evidence, recorded evidence, I forget if it was text, I know he said it was phone calls that were on speakerphone that will implicate the president and his family of bribery with foreign nations. And I find it interesting that both of these things come out at the same time.
Well, what's really interesting is this. All 3 of the indictments on President Trump have come literally a day after something specific happened in the Biden atmosphere or universe. Devon Archer gives his testimony. The next day, President Trump's indicted in the January 6th stuff. So, I mean, it would sound empty and it would sound repetitive that the Department of Justice is doing some really squirrely stuff.
Yeah.
Questionable to many, myself included. I think the timing is really strange, like you just mentioned. And I think the fact that they waited so long and tried to, go back to what had happened with Hunter Biden, for instance. He was supposed to have a plea deal in place. His attorneys tried to camouflage a blanket immunity deal in that plea deal, and the judge did her job and exposed that, gave them an opportunity to go back and mediate that and take care of it, and hopefully they do. But I think there's some substantial charges there that need a harder look, coupled with what we now know to be, at least testified under no oath to be fact. We know that the laptop is real, and we can revisit and relitigate what transpired in the 2020 election, which is a good thing to fodder about because, at the end of the election, they tried to tag that as Russian disinformation. So it all plays into itself. I think the Biden White House and the Biden I hate using the Biden crime family, but man, it's just all flags are pointing in that direction. I think that will play out in itself also. Relative to President Trump and his indictments, I mean, we're going to see more. There's a possibility that we'll see an indictment in Georgia. We'll see an indictment in Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And his narrative of pylon, it's all about the timing. I mean, you're talking about the guy who's now. I'm working for Vivek Ramaswamy, who I believe we need to have as our president. We can talk more about that. But Vivek, as we speak now, is doing a press conference, and he's suing the DOJ himself as to why this kind of stuff is happening. It's not right. And life would be a lot easier for the Ramaswamy campaign if Donald John Trump wasn't in the race. But that's not what it's about. It's about equal justice for everyone. This Department of Justice is marching along a partisan line. They've been doing so for a long time. And it's time that we, as a country, not either side of an aisle, but we as a country look up and start scratching our heads saying that there's something here. There's some there, you know, and the sooner that we recognize that collectively, the sooner we can go forward and turn a page, because we're in trouble as a country right now. So we need to get back together. Everybody talks about unification. Everybody talks about, you know, one flag, one country. We need to start living that. So we can't be in this weaponized position that we're in. And you're a young man, Anthony, and this is the world that you came up in. I'll give you an example. When I was your age, probably a little younger though, back in the day where there were 3 or 4 TV stations transmitted over the air, and you had to have rabbit ears on your TV, or you know, a TV antenna on your roof, we would get Walter Cronkite, or we'd get Peter Jennings. You know, you get CBS, NBC, ABC. Those are the news sources you would get. And you'd get a tidbit of 30 seconds to a minute during the 6 o'clock news as to what had happened in Washington, D.C. that day. And that was all you had. And you read newspapers. Now in the information age, people are getting it as it happens. They're getting more information. People are far more knowledgeable about politics, and that's a great thing, totally a great thing. But some of those media sources, TV, internet stuff, is weaponized too. And we find ourselves at this point in this country. I was a Democrat in a past life. I mean, I was a Democrat and switched to the Republican Party a bunch of years back. But we never looked at the other side of the aisle as the enemy. You go out to have a Coke with friends or a burger or something with friends now, and if you happen to talk about politics, which happens a lot more often now, people aren't necessarily comfortable in talking about it because it's been so weaponized, it's been so tribalized.
Yeah.
And we need to learn how to be more statesmanlike, for lack of a better term, but that's a true term, about the other side of the aisle. Because you happen to be a Democrat and I happen to be a Republican, doesn't mean you're the enemy. It means you have a differing point of view, and our 2 points of view come together because we do both salute that same flag. We have to remember that at the end of the day, you know?
Very well said.
No, it's the truth, though.
Yeah.
It's the truth. I served. I'm a military veteran. It didn't matter what color, what religion, what sex, or where you came from in the country, or what political affiliation you had. You serve together for the same purpose. That's what we all have collectively in common in this country, and we've forgotten about that. And we've been so tribalized in politics. My political leanings does not dictate who I am as a human being, nor does it to you, or nor does it to the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives. We have a differing political view, but I know them to be good people and good souls, and we have to remember that. We have to get back to who we are as a people in this country, and that's something that Vivek is trying to bring to the forefront in his campaign. Pride in being an American again. Pride in that flag, you know, the weaponization of even patriotism at this point, it's craziness. It's just truly craziness. And it's something I know we all ache for, no matter what affiliation politically you have. We all ache for that engagement. We all ache to join hands and fight a common cause. And we just need to get there. We need to get there.
One thing I'll say I've been to the State House a few times this past year, and one thing I notice when I'm like at lunch, for example, I see Republicans eating lunch with Democrats, right?
Yeah.
Right after they get done, not attacking, but heavily disagreeing with each other on the floor. Because in the end, like you said, it's about one nation under God.
Yeah.
So,
Totally agree, and it's never been more of an example than this session right now. We are so evenly divided. The House of Representatives has 400 members. Right now, the Republicans, I believe, we're at 203 right now of the 400 seats. That is a very evenly divided House of Representatives.
Yeah.
So you have to compromise and you have to work together in unison. The committees, usually if one party or the other has a majority, I sit on the Ways and Means Committee that handles revenue, taxes, and such. Now, under a normal circumstance, if Democrats had a majority, they would have an extra vote on that committee, which kind of shifts the scales to the party in power. Right now, every standing committee short of 2 is even, 10-10. So we have to actually do the work, do the negotiating, do the statesman-like thing when we want to get things accomplished for the state of New Hampshire.
and you still manage to get a bipartisan budget passed.
And there's a fine example. I mean, there was a lot of things that I didn't particularly like in that budget, but I know there are things that the other side of the aisle didn't like. We have to come to that table and come to an agreement that is acceptable to both, but most importantly, pays off for the people who voted for us to put us in that position to try to save them money to get the services out to them that they need as citizens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That was very well said. And that's something I try to push on my show and on social media. It's not as divided as it seems if you actually just look, because there's a lot more agreeing than people realize in government. Like, sure, all the big bills that are definitely party line, like, for example, Parental Bill of Rights, that gets a lot of media coverage. But what doesn't get a lot of media coverage usually, I'll give it an example. I remember going to the House one day this year, and they did I forget if it was a roll call or whatever, but it was for naming a bridge after a fallen veteran. And I believe it was 400 yes, 0 no. That's the stuff that doesn't get coverage, like the stuff that, you know, the little things that keep us moving.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a pretty easy decision to make.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about something, for instance, because we were so evenly divided, let's go back to the very beginning of the session. We vote for a Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
We had a fairly substantial number of Democrats vote for our Republican Speaker of the House, but because they know him to be a fair and even-handed leader. And, you know, that's what we have right now in the scenario that we're in right now. So it's very interesting times. And what's funny in this, too, is because of who I am now, I endorsed and got on board with President Trump before it became fashionable, okay? When I first met him, it was in February or March of 2015 at Trump Tower. Corey Lewandowski's a friend of mine. He brought me down. The president wanted to, the then candidate wanted to meet me. I met with him a few times, and when I had made the decision in March of 15 to endorse him, I came back and I was kind of laughed at that point because people thought it was a publicity stunt. He was going to do another Celebrity Apprentice thing. We know the history in that. Yeah. And we know my history in the last 8 years of pushing forward President Trump's policies and his campaign. So I've always had the optics of being that Trump guy, Fred. And you know me personally, so you know how I roll, you know how I engage people, and sometimes I can be a little sharper on the edges, but I think what I found out, and a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have found out this particular biennium is, well, Fred's actually a guy I can work with, and I've had more Democrats come up to me and say, Fred, I had the wrong impression in you, and I can say the same thing about a few Democrats, too. And we've learned we can collectively get the job done for the people who put us into office. And if we start there, the ball's rolling downhill and it'll do nothing but collect snow on the way down. And let's get to that place where we can agree to disagree but not be disagreeable. You know?
Yeah. And switching topics, but keeping with New Hampshire government, we've had a lot of candidates announce in the 2024 New Hampshire governor's race. And we've talked about this the past couple episodes, but the update is that Kelly Ayotte had her launching party, and 50 individuals, I don't have them named here, but it includes several state reps, former state reps, several community leaders. So, yeah, I believe Frank Edelblue will run as well.
I think so.
He hasn't announced yet, but I believe he will. Robert Burns might also, but...
Possibility, yeah.
And then we have the two Democrats who I've mentioned before, Joyce Craig, Cindy
Well, you
Warmington.
missed Chuck Morse now, too.
Chuck Morse,
Yeah.
I don't know, and I talked about this last episode as well, but I don't know how it's going to go yet, because it's 5 people, 3 on one side, 2 on the other, and they all have their own recognition, their own philosophies that are very different, I think.
Yep.
And the other thing is that in the general election, it's not going to be a, what's the word, heavy Republican seat anymore now that Sununu's gone. Because when Sununu was there, he was winning by double digits every time. And now we're going to have more of a swing seat for the governor's seat. So
I'd probably analyze that a little differently, but I agree to an extent. And what we'll end up having, we'll have 3 or 4 Republicans in a primary. I come from Salem. Chuck Morse is from Salem. I've worked with Chuck for years. As a matter of fact, Chuck Morse and I go way back, and he jokes about this from time to time. When I was on the fire department in Salem, I was, I forget whether I was president or vice president of the fire union at the time, and he was a selectman in Salem. And we negotiated contracts. Back then, I was a Democrat at that point, but we came together and actually got the job done for both parties involved, the town and the people who work for the town. And Chuck will joke about that, how far back we go. But I, for one, have endorsed Kelly Ayotte, and I have a long history with Chuck. Doesn't mean he will make an outstanding governor. I just happen to believe that Kelly Ayotte is the right person right now, and I believe she can take us, take what we've accomplished as a state and bring it forward. So it'll be an interesting race, to say the least, because a lot of people like myself, and I like Frank and Bob Burns as a friend. These are all people that are in my world, but I have made it a point, at least in my political life, is I pick somebody out. A lot of people won't endorse. You know, I'm trying to get people to endorse Vivek right now. And a lot of people say, well, I don't endorse in primaries. Well, if you don't endorse in primaries, you don't endorse, because obviously you're going to support your party candidate after a primary. So, and here's some more stuff to reflect on. When Chuck Morse ran for U.S. Senate this last cycle, I worked on his campaign. So I believe Chuck to be a great leader, I hate politician, the word politician. He's a great elected leader. He's built budgets. He's worked with us before. But there are others, much like Kelly Ayotte, who has the depth of knowledge that I think has a little extra tick to it, and I think she brings something else to the campaign. And I look forward to that race being civil. They get through it, and we can elect another Republican governor.
Civil, at least on the Republican side, because the Democrats have already attacked. I know they've attacked Ayotte.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they do. That's what they do. And that's kind of the crux of a lot of what I'm talking about today is we don't have to be visceral about politics. We're all in it for the same reason, and we don't have to be possessive and tribal about things. We need to agree to disagree, explain our differences to one another, explain what you would do to change for the better what's going on right now, and have people come in and say, you know what, that's the right person. I'm going to vote for that person. It's not about an R or a D after your name. It's about getting the job done at the end of the day.
All right, so that's the end of the topic. So now the show is yours. What are you doing with Vivek? What's going on at the State House? So.
Oh, geez. Let's see. Well, I was a little late for this today. We'll start with that. The State House. I serve as Deputy Majority Leader. So Jason Osborne's our Majority Leader. Sherm Packard is our Speaker. And what we've been doing over the last few days is meeting with the chairs and vice chairs of all the various committees, because we're on a summer break right now. So we've been meeting with those chairs to find out some of the bills that they had to retain that they didn't take action on in the first year of the biennium, to find out where they feel they're going to go, to set priorities, bringing them forward to if they expect to see new legislation coming in, anything that would be hot button that we should know about, and to talk about the dynamics, like we were talking about how things were going. Here's a for instance. Today we met with 3-4 different committees, chairs and vice chairs, and we met with the special committee on housing that Speaker Packard put together this biennium. A special committee, and it just so happens the bipartisan nature of what we were just talking about. We have Joe Alexander, a Republican, and Ben Baruti, who's a Democrat. Joe chairs that committee, Ben is the vice chair, and we sat in the Speaker's office today and talked about what are some of the solutions to one of the biggest problems we have in the state, housing. Housing availability, affordability, and on and on. And they have done some great work in that committee, and they're going to bring forth, I believe, maybe about 6 bills that we're going to have a chance as a legislature to look at, take a position on, and vote on, and hopefully start solving some of these big picture problems. But that's an example of coming together, working together, an issue that's very near and dear to everybody in the state. And there's a Democrat and a Republican leading that committee. So some of that. Let's see. Tomorrow, I have Vivek in the state. He's coming doing this big combination of radio media and Newsmax doing a day-long broadcast with pretty much all the candidates, except for maybe 2 or 3. They'll either come in virtually or whatever. Vivek's coming in. He's going to do, I believe we're doing Close-Up in the morning, filming that for the Sunday show. Then he's going to go over to the Jack Heath show, and Newsmax will be there, so he'll be in person for that. Then we have a couple events, a lunch event. He's got a couple meetings, and then we're going to do another big event in Concord, Pies and Politics in Concord.
Saw an ad for that.
Yeah. And Vivek, he loves coming here. Absolutely. This guy is phenomenal. If you've never seen or heard of Vivek Ramaswamy, you need to take the time just to do a YouTube search on him. We're polling a new poll that just came out. We're literally tied 12% with Ron DeSantis right now. And the only negative comment I get about Vivek Ramaswamy when somebody hears him speak is, boy, he'd make a good vice president for so-and-so. And my standard response to that is, well, guess what? You've got him halfway there and you don't even know him yet. So take the time to listen to Vivek. He's a spark plug. He's a young man with fresh legs. He's an outsider. And he's someone who's bringing something we need to the table that not too many other people are doing. A lot of people use their political campaign talking points. Vivek gives you fact, and Vivek will engage you in conversation. And he'll answer any question that you have. And we have Democrats, liberals, activists from the other side of the aisle show up at our events. And there was an example. Trying to think of where he was. It might have been in Iowa, but it might have been in Tennessee. I'm not sure, but no, it was in Iowa. They just signed something relative to abortion, the Iowa legislature.
I believe I heard that.
Yeah, and Vivek was doing a meeting, with a room full of people, and somebody came in shouting. A woman was very upset, and it seems nowadays the louder you shout, your point gets across, but that's not necessarily the case. But she said her, vernacular and started to head for the door, and Vivek had the people that were escorting her out. No, bring her back, and engaged her in conversation. And once they did that, she saw what he was offering to her. It was he genuinely wanted to hear her position, and found out she was personally touched by these things, and explained his genuine position to her, and they walked out of there with a different understanding of one another. And that's what we're so sorely lacking in politics nowadays, is the humanization and the real deal in what it's all about at the end of the day. And I invite your viewers, and I know you've seen him a few times.
Yeah, I have seen him twice. I saw him at a town hall in Wyndham. You were there.
Sure.
And I saw him at one of Chris Ager's lectures at St. Anselm. You were there too.
Yep.
So he really is one of the smartest people I have ever seen speak. Yeah. He just starts on one point, and he can talk about it for a long time, and everything is like easy to understand, but still full of knowledge. And he understands people, I think. That's
and what's amazing, I say this all the time too, is I've thought in my life that I've met the smartest people I'm ever going to meet in my life. Vivek to the fourth power. And the most important component about Vivek to me is he checks that common sense box.
Yeah.
And I've watched him. Like I said, I advised nationally on the campaign, and I've been out. He's from Columbus, Ohio, and I've met his family, and I've watched him interact. And the guy is he's not only a good man, he's a good father. He brings so much to the table, so much depth of knowledge. Self-made guy, started built billion-dollar companies, and he's 37 years old. And it's time for us to engage the youth in this country.
Yeah.
And stop talking about it, actually do it.
That's what this show is. Most of my audience is high school students, so you're getting your...
This is the guy they need to take a look at, whether you're voting or not voting. And I would welcome you to contact Anthony in any way. He knows how to get a hold of me. If you want to get engaged and involved in a presidential campaign, come on down. We'd love to have you join us.
All right, so we are just about out of time, so would you like to give a brief closing statement before we end?
No, thanks for taking the time. I really enjoyed that. You're a great guy, Anthony, and I don't do too many of these, and I've had a good time. This has been good just to chat with you about this, as we do normally. So
yeah, well, thank you for coming. I had a great time also, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ass. Thank you for watching.